Guess who's back? Back again. Spanny's back. Tell a friend. Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Bruh. That's the sound that you're probably making. Anywho, I'm back. Back. Man, I might have to do like 1, 2, 3 live streams today. Holy moly. So if you don't want to watch Spanny, just disable notifications because we got some live streams coming. We got holy moly, I got a day ahead of me. Holy moly. Yeah, so right now we're doing AMXkids 3, Hatchet 3. This is a branch of AMX. To AMX a book means to read a book and talk about it. To read a book, extract the learning principles, the lessons therein, and talk about them. Relate them to your life, my life, our future goals and aspirations. That's about what AMX is, kids. Even though you're not kids watching right now. I would suggest that you please, I would ask actually that you please pass this on to the kids, the young people in your life. AMXkids is more or less middle-aged school kids, give or take a few years either way. Yeah, so thanks for tuning in and let's get ready to rock and roll. Okay. Quick reminder, you can get this episode as well as every other episode by subscribing on iTunes. Just search out Spaniard. Click subscribe. Every episode will be sent straight to your inbox. All right, power mind. Okay. Let's do this. It's hot. Ain't gonna lie, it's hot. All right, let's rock and roll. 1, 2, 3. Hello all, and welcome to AMXkids 3. The book I'm currently reading is Hatchet. Listen here, young people. Listen here. Learning, reading will get you what you want. So let's start by hopping over to charliespaniard.com/reading list to get this book, Hatchet, as well as every other book that I read that could potentially change your life. You got to put in the work. That's what you got to remember. You've got to put in the work. It takes time. Like anything worth anything, it takes time and effort to get. Reading is the passageway between myself here and now and the goals that I have in the future, and it can do the same for you. So the book that we're currently reading is Hatchet, a great novel by Gary Paulson. I'm reading this book. It's taking me back to middle school. It's taking me back to this. I'm reading about Brian, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is awesome. This is cool. This is adventurous. This is scary. This is intense. This is all of those things bound into one. And we're talking about themes like accountability, right? Accountability is ownership or taking responsibility for yourself and your actions. We're talking about survival. We're talking about connection. Brian is learning. We're talking about learning. Brian is learning how to survive in the wilderness on his own. We're talking about getting things done. There's so many things that I want to do in this world, and there have been times, there still are times, where I sit there and I ask myself, or I complain and I say, oh, that's not fair. And then I remind myself, oh, hey, Spanny, if you want something, you got to go get it. So that's the reminder that Brian is serving to all of us. We've gone through his flying, being in the plane crash, being out in the wilderness by himself, learning to start fire. I'm going to reference that again. We get into a point now where Brian's journey is evolving, and I want you to read the book. Right, I'm trying to create cliffhangers. So you go out and purchase the book, and you go out and read the book, because that's where the money's at, is in the actual reading, the processing, the digesting of information. And the first thing I want to talk about today, there's about 6 or 7 bullet points that I want to discuss today, and have you discuss with your parents, coaches, teachers, and or your friends. That's the idea here. Don't let me down, kids. The first thing I want to talk about is the power of your mind. Excuse me, the power of your mind, the power of your thoughts, and the resulting power of action and activity. So Brian's out in the wilderness. His journey is evolving. He is evolving as a person. He's changing. We're going to talk about change here in a little bit. But on this idea of not being found. So imagine yourself out in the wilderness. Okay, yesterday I went to a state park, and I enjoyed the state park, and we started to walk in this path. I live in the Harrisburg area. There's a state park called Pinchot Park. we're walking in this path. And it's a nice path. There's little pebbles, little stones, and I'm walking. And I'm thinking like, yeah, I'm out in the wild. I'm surviving. And then there was like a gnat and a bug. And I was like, ugh, a bug. And then there was a sign that said, beware of snakes. And I was like, oh, snakes. So I'm reading this book, getting excited about this adventure. And then I'm put in my place to realize, oh, you're not so tough, Spanny. You're not so tough at all. So it's easy for us to imagine ourselves as the hero. But when you're reading a situation like Brian's, it kind of smacks you in the face like, wow, this is the real deal. This is actually tough stuff. So on not being found, remember, he's alone in the wilderness, alone. I believe he's 13 years old. He hadn't been found yet. And on this idea of the loneliness, he says, quote, it was a mental thing. Well, in the book says, quote, it was a mental thing. He had gotten depressed, thinking about how they hadn't found him yet. I want you to understand this power of your mind, the power of your brain. And as I say this to you, I suffer from this stuff just like Brian, just like you. It's a daily, ongoing battle, and I've come to understand and be okay with the fact that it's continuing. It will be ongoing. I'm going to talk about Brian's challenge with finding food and how that's an ongoing challenge. This idea of fighting that negativity. I have the stat written on my desk: 50,000 conversations with ourselves every day. 80% are negative. So we're prone to this negativity. We're prone to this fight. So he had gotten depressed, thinking about how they hadn't found him yet. This got me thinking about my professional fighting career. So following a loss, okay, so as a professional fighter, we would fight every couple months, every 3 months, 4 months, sometimes longer, sometimes a little bit shorter. But following a loss, it's so stinking devastating. It is so devastating. Everything's terrible. Everything's miserable. You just feel like there's a big, gloomy cloud over everything you do. So how can we remedy this? What I used to do when I was fighting, because there was so much time in between fights, there was months at a time, and I didn't want to feel like garbage for months at a time. So what I would do, and use this technique on your own, the next time maybe you fail a test, or maybe you do poorly in a baseball game, or you play your instrument in a not good way or in your not best way, try this technique. I would give myself a week to 10 days. So following a setback, I would give myself a week to 10 days to basically be like a baby. You know, I would pretty much say to the people around me, to my wife, you know, my family, hey, I'm going to be a baby for the next 7 days. But when that 7 days is up, boom, you're back on the horse. You forget, you move on, right? You digest it, you swallow it, you feel bad about it, you pity yourself for a set period of time. And then after that set period of time, boom, you get back on the horse. Why? Why and how does that work? First of all, you get your emotions out of you. You allow yourself to feel bad, which is important. But then getting back on the horse. Also in the book, it says, quote, when he was busy and had something to do, the depression seemed to leave. So when Brian was busy and had something to do, the depression seemed to leave. So in the book, it's saying this. In my personal life, I've experienced this the same way. When you get back on the horse, when you start working again, when you have a purpose or a mission again, I got to win that next fight. I got to get back to the top of the mountain. I got to play my instrument to the tens. I got to win. I got to study and I got to ace there. I got to get an A or I got to pass. Whatever your goal is, when you start the action and the activity toward that next goal, it results in a much more positive feeling. It's not a solve-all. It's not going to solve everything, but it can at least start the process of feeling better. So upon experiencing all of these new circumstances, I'm going to talk a little bit about growth and evolution. So upon experiencing all of these new things out in the wilderness, we're talking learning to start a fire, we're talking finding food, we're talking being alone, we're talking running with a bear, running with wild animals, just all of these new things. Brian says, quote, I'm not the same. I see, I hear differently. I am not the same. I see, I hear differently. You are the accumulation. The accumulation or the accumulation, I'm not sure which word it is. I'm sorry, my friends. You're the accumulation of your experiences. From them, right? From these experiences, you become a new person. I'm thinking 2 state titles. I fell short of my ultimate goal of winning 2 state titles in high school. I am a completely different person than I would have been had I won those 2 state titles. Getting knocked out on TV. Notice I mentioned all the bad things. I did good things too, I promise. I promise I did good things. But you are different. Now, whether you win and you're a good person in that way, or you lose and you're a new, whether you win and you're a new person in that way, or lose and a new person in that way, Think of you are the accumulation of those experiences. Think of the people you met in that journey. Right? So if you fell short of a goal, maybe you studied for a test and maybe you failed the test, but maybe you studied with your mom and your dad during that test. Maybe you got together in a couple study groups. Maybe you asked someone in your class a question. Maybe they helped you study. Maybe they pointed you to a different reference or a different person. Think of all of those life experiences that you've gained in those processes. You are a different person. Change is okay. I'm a much different person today, July 10th. 2018 than I was July 10th, 2017, because I know new people, I know new things, I've read more books, I've learned more, I've studied more, I've become a more effective, I think, person, certainly a more effective speaker and podcaster. I hope. Come on, come on now. I hope. So this idea of change is okay. It's kind of like a river. You ever see actually yesterday when I was at Pincho Park, it's a lake, right? It's a man-made lake, and it doesn't have a very good in-source and out-source of water. So the water sits there and it becomes stagnant, and there's a lot of funk, right? If you've been to a lake or a pond, you know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of funk that goes on there. It's water that I wouldn't love to dive into. Now, think about a flowing river. Nothing against you lakes and ponds, by the way, but think of a flowing river. A roaring river. Maybe it's rapids. Maybe it's a little stream. I think of a stream here around Hershey, Pennsylvania, where I go and I walk in with my kids. It's like pristine. It's crystal clear. It's flowing. It's vibrant. It's full of life. It's full of all this stuff. That's kind of what I liken your life journey to. A river like that. It's flowing. It's vibrant. It's energetic. It just keeps going. That's another thing that I'm going to talk about a little bit that ties in there. This idea of just keeping going. So understand that this change, boom, it's coming. You can't stop it. But what you can do is you can use those experiences, those instances, those people, those places, those skills, knowledge that you accumulate for the better. Moving on to the next bullet point, and I just said this, but we're going to build on it. This idea of just keep going, don't stop. How many of you all, look down right now, look in the mirror, how many of you all are wearing something Nike? Something Nike related. If you're at home, look around your room. If you're at school, if you're at the gym, if you're at the library, because I know we're at the gyms and we're at the libraries, even though it's summertime, we're working. How many of you have anything Nike? Do some reading. I'm going to talk here in a little bit about a detail on Nike, but there's a great book called Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. Might be a little bit advanced reading for you, but I highly recommend diving into it. His best advice that he ever got was, just keep going, don't stop. That's what we're going to do. Just like the river, we're going to keep going, we're going to not stop. So at one point in the book I talked about last week, Brian had to start a fire, right? He had to start a fire. And he learned that it was a long way from sparks to fire, meaning that it's hard work. Anything worth anything, creating a fire out in the wilderness, which is really important, it's hard work. It's a long way from sparks to fire. At this point, he's trying to create a weapon to kill some animals. He's got a fish. He wants some meat. He wants to eat some fish. So actually, fish is not a meat, but he wants to eat a fish. He needs some more sustenance. He needs some more protein. So he had to figure out how to make a tool to get that fish. And it went through several iterations. I'm going to talk a little bit about innovation here in a minute. But it went through several iterations to get to the ultimate tool. But he says, quote, the fish spear didn't work. He had been so sure, so absolutely certain that it would work the night before. Understand this. Failure is a guaranteed part of success. Failure is a guaranteed part of success. I'm reading a book now by Stephen King, who's one of the greatest novelists of all time. He writes sci-fi and horror, scary stuff. I remember when I was your age, watching It for the first time, it's about a scary clown. I think it came out of a sewer, and I was scared out of my mind. So I don't know that we need to read those books right now. But anyway, it was talking about his humble beginnings and just how failure and setback, and he used to hang. So he put a nail in the wall, and he used to hang rejection letters from people who rejected his stories. This is Stephen King, one of the greatest novelists of all time. And he, as a kid, used to hang his rejection letters because he just wasn't good enough back then. But he didn't stop. Neither did Brian. Brian figures out how to catch those fish. I want to give you a couple fun little examples here. They might not be right in your wheelhouse, but I'm guessing you've heard of all of these people and things. Impractical Jokers. Impractical Jokers is a fun show on True TV. And my old roommate used to love this show, so she turned me on to it. And Impractical Jokers, I was just listening to an interview they did the other day. And they were talking about selling out Madison Square Garden. Madison Square Garden, one of the greatest arena in the world. Madison Square Garden. They sold it out. 10 years ago, they had a show, certainly not at Madison Square Garden, and they sold 2 tickets. 2! Not 2,000, not 200,000, not 20 or 200. 2! But they just kept going. Nike. I told you about Nike. I don't think I'm wearing anything Nike right now. Nope, nothing right now. But Nike is, I love Nike, right? Well, after 10 years in business, they still were not making money. 10 years. Kentucky Fried Chicken. Oh, I love me some KFC. I love me some honey barbecue KFC. Every once in a while, I like to dive into some KFC. Harlan Sanders was rejected. Harlan Sanders is the guy who created KFC. They were rejected. He was rejected. I've seen different numbers. I've seen 700 to 1,000 times before someone took on his recipe. 700 to 1,000 rejections. Would you keep going if you were rejected 700 or 1,000 times? I'm not going to lie. It would be extremely tough. He was rejected that many times, but just kept going. And Walt Disney. What's your favorite Walt Disney movie? What's your favorite Disney movie? For some reason, boy, Lion King pops into my mind. Frozen. Can't have a kid and not love Frozen. Walt Disney was rejected 300 times by bankers before he was able to get the money to create the first Disney World. That's it. That's what I want to pass on to you right now. Just keep going. Don't stop. Now, this falls into the next topic, innovation. If we were in a classroom right now and I would say to you, raise your hand if you know what innovation is. Would you know what innovation is? As a 12-year-old, 10-year-old, I don't know that I would have known what innovation is. Innovation just means to create something new. It's a different way of doing something. Some examples. Cell phones were a result of innovation. Cell phones didn't always exist. Google didn't always exist. The internet is an example of innovation. Automobiles. Used to be a horse and carriage. Automobiles are an example of innovation. Airplanes. They are a result of innovation. It comes from thinking. It comes from learning. It comes from trying new things. It also comes from failing. Airplanes weren't successful on the first time, and they have evolved over time. So in this book, Hatchet, Brian needed to make things happen. There was no one else. It was him and only him. He needed to make this stuff happen. And in the book, there's actually a saying that says, necessity is the mother of invention. When you need something, you will find a way to get it done. When you need something, when you really want something, and I'm going to talk here in a minute about how to know if you really want something, you will find a way to get it done. Upon needing to kill a fish, Brian created something. He created a tool. I'm not going to tell you what the tool is because I want you to read the book. I want you to go to charliespaniard.com/reading list and get the book and read it. Dive into this stuff. In the book, it says, discoveries happened because they needed to happen. Remember AMXkids 1 when I talked about needs versus wants? There's a lot of things in life that you might want, but there's a lot of things in life that you need. And those things you need, you got to be resourceful. You got to be resourceful to find a way to make them happen. So what does resourceful mean? I didn't go to the dictionary like the old timers like myself used to have to do. I went to Google. Resourceful means having the ability to find quick and clever ways to overcome difficulties. If you are resourceful, it means having an ability to find quick and clever ways to overcome difficulties. So what if you're sitting there and you're saying, but Spaniard, I'm not resourceful. I don't have the ability. I can't figure things out. Well, if you're like me in tools, you don't mix. Some of you, I'm guessing, go out to the garage with your mom or your dad, or you figure stuff out with your parents. I was training. I was wrestling. I was studying. So I never became much of a handyman. But I do believe that I have the ability to learn how to be a handyman. You have the ability to learn how to be resourceful. It's this idea that learning will get you what you want, especially with YouTube. I know 95% of you are on YouTube every day. You can learn things on YouTube. You don't just have to watch people opening toys or putting on makeup on YouTube. You can actually learn how to put in a new floor, put in stairs. You can learn all this stuff. You've got to commit yourself to being a lifelong learner, consuming all of this stuff to learn to get the things you want. I alluded to this idea of how to know if you really want something. I interviewed another UFC fighter. His name is Matt the Immortal Brown, and this guy is tough as tough can be. So think of a tough person, someone who you think is tough. This guy is it. And he talked about making decisions in life. He came from a really rough background. He was involved in drugs and alcohol, and then he reached a point in his life where he decided that he would get out of that lifestyle and devote himself to mixed martial arts, became one of the best in the world. So how do you know if you really want something? Well, you decide, make a decision in your mind. I will work for this thing no matter what, no matter how hard it gets. I will not stop. I will keep going. That's how you know. It sounds very simple because it is very simple. You know you really want something when you simply will not stop working for that thing. So Brian was hungry. You know, not just fish, but he had berries. He had a variety of things that he was scavenging out in the wild. But it said in the book, Brian had, quote, a hunger that made him look for things, see things, a hunger to make him hunt. When you decide that you want things, you will get them. Remember, things will appear. Remember me talking about the law of attraction? Sounds fancy. Sounds pretty high tech. But the law of attraction is just simply saying what you think about, you bring about. When you decide that you want to get an A on a test, you want to pass a test, you want to make the team, when you decide that, things will start coming into your life that will help you accomplish those goals. I've seen it in my own life with speaking and podcasting, getting to the UFC, wrestling, all of these different things. When you actually make that decision, things will start to appear. Your blinders will come off. You'll start to see differently and hear differently. And two more quick messages I want to throw your way. The first is adversity. I was reading this book thinking like, all right, what's a valuable takeaway for a young person to take from this? Is this understanding of adversity. I talked a little bit about failure being a part of success, but this idea of adversity. You know, what is adversity? You might have heard the phrase, so-and-so battled through adversity, or they're battling adversity. What does it mean? Well, Google says that adversity is a condition or state of serious or continued difficulty or misfortune. So if you have a tough day, maybe it's a tough couple of days, maybe it's a tough week, maybe it's a tough month, a tough year, a tough period of your life, that's adversity. Adversity can be, short-term, or it can be long-term. So it's a state of serious or continued difficulty or misfortune. So Brian is facing adversity to the utmost. He's dealing with life and death. He's dealing with survival. He's dealing with actually finding a way to survive out in the wild by himself at 13 years old. I'm sitting in front of an iPhone and a MacBook Pro and a nice notebook in front of me, a nice hot coffee to my side. Things aren't that bad for me right now. I might have a lot of work. I might have a lot of stuff on my to-do list. My desk might be a little bit messy beside me, but all in all, life's pretty good. So Brian is dealing with real adversity, but he maintains hope and he maintains belief that he will get through. And this is the idea of just keep going, don't stop. It says in the book, quote, he could not play the game without hope, could not play the game without a dream. He could not play the game without hope, could not play the game without a dream. You've got to keep believing. You've got to believe that there's a way. I was thinking back to my professional fighting career. I shattered my eye socket, which means the bones around my eyeball were broken. I thought I lost my eye. I temporarily lost my vision. At one point I had a stroke. I don't know if you would know what a stroke is, but for a young person to have a stroke, it's a health condition that is not normal for a young person to have, and it can be life and death. I was fortunate to get through. Those were bigger sources of adversity in my life. Short-term adversity is during a wrestling match or during a fight, getting taken down or getting knocked down or getting in a submission and having to fight your way out. That's kind of the name of the game. Is that adversity is coming your way, so you've got to prep, you've got to learn, you've got to train your mind and train your body to deal with that adversity when it does come. There's a great documentary. If any of you, and again, this maybe is a little bit, maybe is a little bit out of your age category, but there's a documentary on Netflix called Made to be Broken, and it talks about this guy who does the Appalachian Trail, which is from Maine to Georgia. he sets out on a quest to do it in record time. And in the documentary, there's a line that struck me and stuck with me that I wrote down, and it says, it's talking about this adversity that he's dealing with, the difficulty of this quest, and just the physical feat. It's similar to what Brian's going through in Hatchet. It's just all this adversity, and not only just the actual traversing that much land in that short of time, but also the bugs and the wilderness and the rocks and the cliffs and the physical obstacles that he has to overcome. And at one point in the documentary, it says this, quote, "The beauty of it is that it's never always uphill." The beauty of it is that it's never always uphill. That means if you just keep going, if you decide, as I talked about before, decisions, if you decide to keep going, it's never always uphill. And the last thing I want to talk about is this, to cap off AMXkids 3, is Brian's evolution. You know, evolution in the wild. And he's learning new things and he's doing new things. I talked about earlier at the beginning of this episode, this idea of activity and action being really important to make you feel better, right? Action and activity. It said that when he was busy, Brian didn't have time to feel bad. I learned that when I was busy training and working hard to win my fights, I didn't have time to doubt myself. I was just occupied by action. So this idea of action and evolution, changing, learning, on developing the ability to catch food. So Brian, like I said, he had to be resourceful, right? Resourceful, we remember, means having the ability to find quick and clever ways to overcome difficulties. He didn't know how to do this stuff. When he landed in the wild by himself, he didn't know any of this stuff. He said several times, my mom would bring it to me. You know, when I was a kid, when I was in middle school, dinner was made, breakfast was there, the cereal was in the cupboard, lunch meat was in the refrigerator, fruit was there, whatever. It was just there for it. Brian had to be resourceful, had to learn. And with that learning came a sense of pride, came a sense of fulfillment, came a sense of achievement. So upon developing this ability to catch fish, to catch food and essentially survive, it says Brian, quote, felt his throat tighten, swell and fill with pride at what he had done. Look, hard work is hard. Hard work is tough. It's frustrating. It can be annoying as all. It can be as annoying as all get out. Hard work, sometimes it's so annoying. But if you want to feel pride, if you want to feel a sense of completion, you've got to work hard. This sense of completion results in fulfillment. Fulfillment is an inner feeling of achievement. You get that from working hard. Like I said, I've been working hard pretty much all my life. Certainly haven't won all my life. I've lost a lot. But what never wavers is that underlying feeling of achievement or a good feeling in your belly that you know you're working hard. You too, my friends, can work hard. You know what you got to do? You've just got to decide to do it. This has been AMXkids 3, reading the book Hatchet by Gary Paulson. Go on out and get this book. You can get it at charliespender.com/reading list. Here's what I would like you to do, young people. Share this episode with your friend. Share this episode with your parents. Parents, if you're listening, share this episode with your kids. Share this episode with your teachers, your administrators and teachers out there. If you're looking for a speaker that wants to spread lifelong learning, that wants to develop tough lifelong learners by way of reading and books, Spanny is your man. Visit charliespender.com/booking to fill out the short form, and I'll be in touch with you. Be bold, my little learning friends. I'll see you next week. If only we could do that 24 hours a day, I'd be a happy camper. There we have it. There we have it, my friends. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you enjoyed AMXkids 3, Hatchet 3. We'll be back next week. We're going to finish off the book. We're going to finish off the book next week. Yeah, so pass it on to your kids. See ya. Oh, I'll be back on tonight, this evening at some point, recording tomorrow morning's AM Excellence. So maybe I'll see you later.